Sign said 40 miles to Canada, my truck tore across Montana. Ian Tyson sang a lonesome lullaby. And so I cranked up the radio, 'cause there's just a little more to go before I cross the border at that sweetgrass sign. I'm Alberta bound, it's a piece of heaven that I found. Rocky mountains and black fertile ground, everything I need beneath that big blue sky. It doesn't matter where I go, this place will always be my home. Yeah, I've been Alberta bound for all my life, and I'll be Alberta bound till I die.
The news was everywhere. For only a $10 filing fee, Canada promised a homestead of 160 acres. The claims were incredible. An abundance of wheat, uncontested grazing land, a suitable climate, safe schools, open churches, a growing transportation system, happiness, prosperity, and more. An offer that good couldn't be ignored, so thousands of men, women, and children left family, friends, and the security of a home to pursue a dream. Farm the land and get rich quick. Under the roof of a vast prairie sky, these entrepreneurs faced extreme weather conditions, endless train rides, back-breaking wagon trails, and hours of walking to seize such an opportunity. Among the thousands chasing the same future were 4 young men in their early 20s. Their passage to Canada left them with lifelong experiences that built their character, strengthened their fortitude, and softened their hearts. Though not in the form of silver coins and paper bills, they gained wealth in unexpected ways. Listen to their story. As we rode out from Stettler to look at plots, I said to Alfred, "This is good farmland. The grass is tall, the sloughs are filled with water, and the wheat fields are thick and green. This is wheat-growing country, all right." I am Ingwald Vegan. I was born April 15th, 1888. My parents, Andrew and Georgina, live in Stony Brook, Minnesota. I have 3 brothers, George, John, and Rudolph, and sisters Theodora and Thea. I'm traveling with my friends to find land. I am lucky to be with these boys as they are friends you can depend on. Let me tell you a bit about them. Alfred and Gilbert Anderson, Joseph Coley, and I grew up together in Stony Brook, one of the 16 townships that make up Grant County in west central Minnesota. The lake by which Stony Brook was founded provided much entertainment for my friends and me. As neighbors, we often played together swimming, fishing, and skating. Minnesota has always been a charming place. The land, made up of rolling green hills and dotted with lakes, first drew settlers in 1870 looking for opportunities to dairy farm and raise wheat and corn. Most early homesteaders were of Scandinavian, German, and British descent, having first settled in regions such as Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, or Iowa. Alfred's grandfather, Anders Anderson, lived in Västervik, Sweden, with his wife Elena, and together they had 3 children, the oldest of which was Alfred's father, Sven, born in 1850. When Anders died in 1860, Elena remarried John Nelson in 1861 and had 5 more children and adopted 1 son. Together, John, Elena, and their 9 children journeyed from Sweden to Douglas County, Minnesota in 1869. By 1880, Sven operated a hotel with his brother-in-law in Evansville, Minnesota. While working there, he met his future wife, Gurina Havig, who was 17 at the time. Gurina came from strong Norwegian roots. Her father, Torres Hansen Havig, came from Stord, Norway before settling in Iowa around 1849. He married Bertha Dahl, and they had 3 children, of whom Gurina was the second oldest. Torres' wife, Bertha, died when the children were young, and Torres remarried a widow, Tarbjor Wenknes. Together, Torres and Tarbjor had 1 daughter. Torres and his family moved to Minnesota in 1870 and took up a homestead in Stony Brook Township. Accompanying him to Stony Brook were his brothers Newt and Hans and their families. Torres was among the earliest of settlers to Stony Brook. I believe Gurina's parents were active members involved in establishing the Stony Brook Township and the Rock Prairie Lutheran Church. It seems the community was incomplete until churches and schools were built. Settlers wanted their children educated with a church to identify with. By 1873, the Rock Prairie Lutheran was the first completed church in Stony Brook. Many of our families attend there and are registered members. The local graveyard also reveals tombstones from early settlers. On December 27th of 1880, Gurina and Sven were married. They had their first child, Henry, in Evansville before moving to Stony Brook in 1882. Alfred Leonard is their third oldest child, born on February 21st, 1886. Gilbert is the fifth oldest. In total, there are 6 boys, Lawrence, Sigwart, and Arnold being the other 3, and 4 girls, Bertina, Selina, Fallberg, and Edna. Sven is a hard-working Swedish man with a thick mustache. He's a kind husband and father and a good neighbor. Gurina is a community midwife. With so many children of her own, it's hard to believe she can make time for anyone else. Many times a year, however, she is called upon to assist with births. Together the family farms about 80 acres. Joseph Coley, whose parents were also some of the early settlers to the region, is like a brother to us with the same aspirations. He is very dependable and comes from the same area of Stony Brook as Alfred, Gilbert, and me. I'm now 20 years old and Alfred is 22. As our parents always say, times have changed. There have been a lot of changes in the last 20 years since we were born, especially in means of travel. When we were small, our parents' only means of travel was by foot or horse. If a person traveled to a city, they may have been able to take the train from there. Now trains seem to run everywhere through towns and villages all across the West, and anyone can ride the train for a cent a mile. The American West experienced a lot of turmoil as it was being settled, but this occurred before our parents arrived. As immigrants, they were not affected by the Civil War or the conflicts with Native Indians. Life in Grant County concentrated on farming. Oh sure, they experienced the usual assortment of farming difficulties, such as blizzards and drought. And they were many miles from a hospital and without some of the conveniences of a larger community. But life in Stony Brook was generally good. So why did the 4 of us boys end up so far from home? Our adventure begins in Grant County, where we started hearing stories about all the cheap land available in Western Canada. Talk was that you could get a quarter section for a $10 filing fee. The land around Stony Brook was pretty much occupied and wasn't cheap. And besides, with all the second generation of boys in the neighborhood, there was a big demand for land. Upon hearing the news about Western Canada opening up, Alfred, Gilbert, Joseph, and I started dreaming, and dreaming big. We thought, why can't we go to Canada and file on some land? So the 4 of us boarded the train at Wendell, Minnesota, and departed from Stony Brook Township at the end of June. We heard there was still some homestead land around Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, so that became our destination. We said goodbye to parents and family. I'm not sure how they felt about us leaving. They must have been proud that we were striking out on a new adventure, but on the other hand, they were probably sad. They had no assurance of when we would return and were uncertain as to where we were headed. However, if anyone could understand their desires, it would be our parents. After all, at one time they did what we are doing now. In fact, most of the parent folk of our community came from other states or even as far away as Europe to settle. And many knew that when they said goodbye to their family and friends, it was for the final time. At least we can return home occasionally for a visit. Saskatoon is a busy place. I understand it's the fastest growing city in Canada. When it was founded in 1906, its population was approximately 4,500, and by 1908 its population was double. There are several remarkable railway bridges crossing the South Saskatchewan River and a traffic bridge for people, horses, and motor cars. Obviously, there's a great interest in farming, and a lot of it taking place around Saskatoon. Upon our arrival, the four of us got talking with a fellow who locates land for homesteaders. He said he had some plots available about 100 miles from Saskatoon. This offer appealed to us, so we hired a team and a Democrat from a livery barn, and the locator took us to the site. A couple days' ride to the plots gave us good opportunity to see the land. It quickly became clear to us that the soil was not what we wanted. It had a red look to it and didn't seem to be rich enough for growing wheat. As this was our primary objective, we decided the area was unacceptable and began the journey back to Saskatoon. Once back, we had to make a decision about where to go next. A couple of neighbor boys from Grant County, Albert and Gus Beeger, had gone to Stettler, Alberta, and from what we had been told, the province had good farming land. Newspapers also report a great surge of immigrants to Alberta to take up homesteads, and business is booming for the railroads, lumber companies, mining industries, and store merchants as the influx of people continues. Towns are springing up all along the rail lines. Alberta is new to Canada. It joined the Confederacy in 1905. Province is a new term for me and takes some getting used to. The boys and I decided to have a look. However, I could tell that Gilbert was not as enthused about this part of the adventure as the rest of us. He seemed to have some serious discussions with Alfred while we traveled. When things didn't work out the way we would have liked, he decided to return home. Perhaps he was a little under the weather, and all the traveling and change in climate was a bit hard on him. Anyway, we agreed if we found suitable land around Stettler, then Alfred would file on some land for him. We could do that so long as the person we were filing for moved onto the land in the near future. So, once we are settled, Gilbert can make his way directly to wherever we are and join us. Gilbert promptly took the next train out of Saskatoon to return to Wendell, while the three of us made Stettler, Alberta, our new destination. We determined to find Albert and Gus and get some advice from them about land possibilities. Back on the train we climbed. It was about a week since we departed from home, and the land shopping was taking more time than we anticipated. To get to Stettler from Saskatoon required a stopover and connection in Edmonton, which is about 300 miles west. This was a short trip relative to our travel to Saskatoon, although the train definitely wasn't the express. We made lots of stops along the way as we passed through numerous settlements. Edmonton is another busy place. It grew quickly in the 1890s during the gold rush as it became the outfitting center for prospectors who headed north. It's now the capital city of Alberta with about 10,000 people. According to the city newspaper, 1908 is the inaugural year for the University of Alberta, and Edmonton is hosting the first music festival in Canada. It seems like an exciting place, and someday I'd like to go back there to visit. But getting through Edmonton also proved more complicated than our ride to Saskatchewan. We arrived on the north side of the river. However, to get to Stettler we needed to leave from Strathcona, which is on the south side of the river. So we made our way across the North Saskatchewan on a newly constructed low-level bridge and caught a southbound train to Stettler via Lacombe. As we headed south for Lacombe, it was immediately obvious that this was the type of land we were looking for. It was flat and open. The soil looked rich, and everywhere it was green. It would have been fine to get some plots near the city on this good land. However, we were too late for that. I don't think I would have enjoyed living that close to Edmonton anyway. It was too busy, with a lot of smoke and noise. I don't think us boys could have handled the city congestion. Even as we traveled, there was so much crowding. I could tell more trains would be needed to move people across this province. Alberta must be a popular destination. We arrived in Stettler later that same day and found the land office. To our surprise, much of the land around Stettler was already taken up, but there were plots available about 60 miles to the southeast. We decided to check these out. In the meantime, we got in touch with Albert and Gus Beeger. It was good to meet up with some familiar faces once again. We're not really used to traveling and seeing so many people in such a short period of time. Albert was very accommodating. He offered to take us out to the plots using his team and wagon. The next day we packed up a few necessities, some food and miscellaneous items such as tarps, shovels, and water buckets, as well as some feed for the horses. We headed southeast from Stettler towards Sullivan Lake. The traveling was easy, but the mosquitoes were ferocious. We found a sheltered spot to spend the night somewhere between Stettler and Sullivan Lake. The night would have been very peaceful but for the shifts we each took to keep a smudge going. Morning came early and we made our way around Sullivan Lake. The water reserve is quite large and reminds us of Stony Brook Lake from back home in Grant County. We needed to be on the east side of it, so we headed south to get around the lake. On the south side, we set up camp for the night. Early the next day, Alfred, Joseph, and I checked the survey stakes while Albert drove the team. We knew we were getting close to the plots. Our little party traveled further east, looking for just the right place. We found some quarters that, according to the land office, were still unsettled. It was a nice location. We had just crossed a creek and there were small lakes and sloughs scattered about. Trees were growing around some of the low-lying areas and there appeared to be plenty of flat, open land for plowing. We were satisfied with the land and location, so we picked out some quarters. I found one for myself, northeast of 143513, and picked one to the west of mine for my brother George. Alfred picked a quarter to the southeast of mine, northeast of 123513, and he picked one for Gilbert directly south of his. Joseph picked one between us, northwest of 123513. We had a good look around to check out our plots and then headed back to Stettler to file on our chosen land. It was July 14th, 1908 that we entered the land office in Stettler to file on our quarter sections. At long last we had acquired some land. It was a good feeling. The prairie guaranteed exciting new adventures, new people, and new work. The future looked promising. Our search for a homestead ended in south-central Alberta, but the realization of our dreams had just begun. In time, we would build a place to live, a sod shack perhaps, or a framed house. We would dig water wells to supply our needs. We would construct buildings to house horses, cows, pigs, and chickens. We would put up fences and build corrals. We would acquire farm implements for seeding, haying, and harvesting. We would grow wheat and other grains. We would adjust to the extremes of weather. We would travel to town to deliver our produce and purchase basic supplies. We would become friends with our neighbors and learn to trust one another. We would help each other during busy seasons and in times of trouble. We would spend time with them visiting and playing games. We would meet in our houses or at the community school to play music and dance. We would assemble in our homes for church services. We would gather at gravesites to bury our dead. We would work from sunup to sundown and sit alone when our workday was complete. We would contemplate the people and places we had left in order to make this place our home. We would long to see and visit with family more often. We would struggle through times of difficulty and enjoy times of plenty. We would learn that our greatest wealth was not in dollars. We would learn that a close companion was more important than riches. We would learn that having a family was worth every struggle. We would learn that God's plan exceeded our dreams of wealth. There would be so much to learn in the coming decades, but that's another chapter to this story.
It's a pride that's been passed down to me, deep as coal mines, wide as farmers' fields. Yeah, I've got independence in my veins. my down home redneck roots or these dusty old Alberta boots. But like a Chinook wind keeps coming back again. Oh, I'm Alberta bound, this piece of heaven that I found. Rocky mountains and black fertile ground, everything I need beneath that big blue sky. It doesn't matter where I go, this place will always be my home. I have been Alberta bound for all my life, and I'll be Alberta bound until I die. And I'll be Alberta bound until I die.